So this is part 15 with it. This is picking up where we left off a few minutes ago with it. I'm going to explain some of these functions as we come into this with it as well. The next part, it's checking the diagonal. As you recall, if you look at your grid, the way you win is either diagonal or row, top down, left to right, or diagonal with this. This particular functions, we do the same thing to as well. So let me bring that in for you. Yuck, I hate that. So, yeah, I want to make sure everything's aligned. See how this got bumped over? I don't know why he does that. Doesn't let me enter. What? That is so strange. Anyways, it doesn't. The white. I can't delete a space on this thing. Anyways, let me tell you about this one right here. This is the Boolean of to check a diagonal with it. Again, it's reading it from left to right and diagonal as the board looks at with this. And here's your for loop to see if it's equal to 1 or not with it, because it's going to increment in this selection statement with it, which is nested into and is checking if that array is equal to 1, and it goes left to right, left to right, left to right until it finds that diagonal, and then it increments it with it as well. So this particular for loop right here is the one that actually increments in twos with it. So it adds up to 2 again with it, and once the equal becomes what's called an OR, this is the pipe with it. The grid size is diagonal with it. One of these statements becomes true. It returns a true with it. That's all. So it goes from left to right, left to right, left to right, left to right, and checks for any diagonal between the X's and O's between all of them. And if it does, it increments to 2 or increments to 1 with it, and returns a false with it as well. So that's what this particular function does with it. It looks through your entire grid, your 9 spaces with it as well. All right. So 9 rectangles to look at it. The next function I want to bring in is to check for the rows with it as well. So it's passing across 2 parameters, and it's based off of, so the row equality is checking if the rows are equal or not with it. So defines the grid when the column is equal or not with it. So it's checking to see, you're initializing, the count is to 0 with it, and then you're going to plug in the 0 here as an equal count to this, and it's going to increment this count by 1 if it's directly in a row with it. And it goes from left to right, and assigns the grid size to the equal sign, updates this equal to whatever the grid size with it. So let's say you're in the first row and you have 3 X's, well, this is going to increment to 1. And let's say you don't have an increment to X, so it's going to return a false. Okay, so that's how it's going to actually return. And in the next row, it's going to see if you have the 3 X's or 3 O's. If it's returning a 0, then it's going to return a false with it. So that's how it actually works with this, and it checks your column grid if it's equal or not with it. Okay. The next function is one that checks the columns with it as well. So you got things looking from left to right, but also you got from right to left with it as well. So this one reverses it. If you look at this particular looks at it, it also does the same thing. The only difference is that C and the I in this one, okay? And it just flips it and checks for the reverse of that. It's checking for the columns this time, from top, bottom, top, going down to the squares with it. That's all it's doing with it, all right? So let me leave this up here. If you want to pause this to get everything you have right here, I know there's squiggly lines, that's for character, for char for character. Have I defined char for character up here yet? It doesn't look like it, did I? That makes me nervous. I should, once I put in the char for character down there, I should define it already. But this should allocate and declare at the same time. But why it's not picking that up? I know that's going to be a problem. Okay, we'll look at it in a second. The next one, it's gonna check if the cell is all set with it, and if the board is overriding the child class with it as well. So let me see here. One-click listener. So there's also, I want to bring in next is the cell set in this, as well as set to null on this one. This particular function, you're passing across the rows and columns in this thing, and you're basically setting the Boolean to set to empty right now with it. It's a null right now with it, okay? Returns an empty board with it when this function is called. So we didn't document that for some reason. Define function for the cell set to be empty. Okay. Then we need one more, is to stop the match with it. Once somebody wins, we need to actually have a stop match function with it as well, right? Stop match function with this. So again, it's checking the left to right to see if the game board has 3 rows. It goes from, let's take a look from the inside of this right now, right? It's checking to see if the object TV is actually looking at if there is an object that's the same object in a row with it. It's going from left to right with it. So text view is your class. The object that you're defining here is the TV, and you're passing in this TV, and sitting here listening is the next one that comes across with it. All right. So this is going from the inside, and it's going out to the next column, reading to the next. The inner 4 is reading it, and the outer one is the one that's advancing the pointer to the next one with it. Okay. Now, that one is, hold on. Okay, so the next one I'm going to bring in is the on-click listener. This is an important function for you to see, because this on-click listener sits there, and let me comment this out. We didn't put this comment in here, so you could see what this function does with it. But this on-click, this view on-click listener it's a huge, it's listening for you to click on X and O's with it as well. Okay, so in here you have an override. At override, again, you know what I was sharing with you with the at override, what it actually does with it. So it sits there and it waits for the X and O person to select the proper squares to put in. So if the turn is the X in this case with it, you have a grid, it's rows and column, and turn is X or turn is 0 or O with it. Either one of these would actually need to put in with it. So it alternates out. This if-else statement becomes an alternate that you can actually use either this or that, or the next person that takes turns with it. So and as the text comes in with it, the turn player takes turn with it. So this turn is the variable that's alternate between the O's and the X with it as well. So if everything becomes a tie with it, and it's a draw, in other words, with it, nobody wins. But if somebody has a text that's in the same, then you call the stop the match in either one of these. That's what this does with it, right? So this is the listener that checks to see the O's and the X. Is it diagonal, or is it rows, or is it column? Then stops the game. That's all this particular function does with it. All right. So it's kind of like a referee. You think about it. All right. The override. I want to point out this override at override function that you have right here. Again, it overrides the particular functions that you're gonna that the child can take its own. Doesn't have to be inherited in with the others with it as well, with what the parent is passing down from it. Let me bring in the on create option menu with this. So this is where it creates a menu, inflates the menu, adds an item that creates an action bar if it's present with it. So you can call the get menu inflator with it, and just brings in the board, clears up the board, returns a true with this as well. Okay. And the last function is the override function with it, right? And this override function with it, I don't think we need a on create menu with it. I didn't do that. And this comment right here actually belongs inside of this right here. Okay. So this particular override is a pops back up if you want to play again. It gets the ID, assigns it to the ID, handles the actions as you click here. The action will automatically handle the clicks and the home up and down button with it, as so long as you specify the activity in the Android manifest of the XML file with it as well. All right. So let me leave this up here for a second. Let me pause, and I want to show the entire. So I went in, I cleaned up a lot of the things in the code with it. So take a look at this is from line 1. This is the main activity.java, line 1 to line 60 on my screen with it. If you want to just take a look at it, pause, compare my code to your code with it. If you don't have what I have, just fill in some of the import stuff, and I moved some of the import stuff below the Android X with it. So let me give you a few seconds to do that. Okay. I'm gonna move from 60. Move 60. I'm gonna scroll this up to line 60. Let's do 60. to line 114 now. And then I'm going to do, you're going to pause, then I'm going to scroll from 114 to line 172. That's 172. I'm going to scroll from 172 to the bottom. Okay, so this concludes. I took out some of my comments in there, so it just bothers me that I can't get the alignment with the comments in there with it. But you can do with or without the comments. I don't care with it. All right, so this concludes the main activity for it. My next one I'm going to talk about, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to compile this to show you that it works, everything with it. We play it, and then I want to show you what needs to be screenshot for the project and what you need for an exam on this one. Okay, I'm going to stop the video.